I'll say it again. Leading humans is one of the toughest jobs you can ever do. Leading a company of humans is one of the toughest jobs you can ever do. And you have to be physically and mentally resilient to succeed.
What's up, my friend, and welcome back to another episode of the Legendary Life Podcast. I'm health expert Ted Rice, health coach, also to executives, entrepreneurs, and other high-performing professionals. Really excited to have you here today. And if this is your first time listening, what we do here is we break down science-based information on how to lose fat, prevent disease, and live a longer, healthier life. And we do that with interviews, and we do that with my own solo episodes. And today I've got a great interview for you. Today we're going to be talking with leadership expert and leadership coach, Jay Farrington, on how your fitness determines how good of a leader you are. So are you someone who is running a business? Are you a CEO? Are you a business owner? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you working your way up in whatever profession that you're in? And are you looking for that edge? Are you looking to really lead, not manage, but lead? Well, that's what we're getting into today with Jay Farrington. And Jay is also a former client of mine, helped him change his body. And he is here today to help you change help you level up your leadership abilities by helping you to understand it better. And Jay is a guy, he's got military experience, law enforcement experience, and martial art experience. This guy is the real deal. He's going to share some of his stories of what got him into leadership, but more importantly, he's going to share with you his approach to helping leaders level up their skills. And let's be honest, even if you aren't an entrepreneur, a business owner in a high-powered career, we're all leaders, right? We're all leaders in some way. And if you want to be better at that, you're going to learn a lot from today's interview with Jay Farrington. Jay Farrington, welcome to the Legendary Life Podcast.
Hi, Ted. How you doing?
Doing great, man. And such an honor to have you on the show. You're a client, and we definitely have to record your testimonial sometime. But today, you're not here for that. Today, you're here to help us with leadership. And the theme of what we're going to be talking about today is being fit to lead, being physically and emotionally fit, because you need both. And it feels like we're in a situation, at least in America, where there's kind of a lack of leadership. Before we get into all that and more, can you just tell the listeners a bit about yourself and what got you into what you're doing today, being the CEO and owner of Dynamic Leadership Solutions?
Well, I started the company, Dynamic Leadership Solutions. I have 25 years in law enforcement. And a lot of my time is spent in leadership positions in law enforcement. But one of the things I noticed throughout my career is I always joke I have the record for working for the amount of worst bosses in the world.
Nice.
But I like to take a negative and turn it into a positive. And I learned a lot about leadership and what not to do. When I was promoted into leadership positions, I made some mistakes, but I learned from them. And I turned the corner and have a lot of successes running several teams and, turning them in from mediocre to high-performing teams that did a lot of great work. And I found that that's kind of my new passion. As I'm transitioning out of law enforcement career, I still have a heart for service for my community and people out there. And I have a lot of friends that own their own businesses. And through conversations with them and them prompting me, they're like, you need to do this as a job. You need to retire from law enforcement and you need to help people out there in businesses because they need to hear what you have in your knowledge. And I finally listened to them and I put a program together based on my thesis from grad school. And I started Dynamic Leadership Solutions and getting going with that.
Very cool. And like so many military people, you're very modest because, You lived in Japan when you were in the Navy. You've taught and trained Krav Maga for over 10 years. You're a firearms instructor. And also, you're the only law enforcement supervisor that ever had their team attacked by a lemur.
Yes, that's kind of a funny story.
Yeah, let's get to that later. But I want to stay on this topic, right? Because you mentioned something I think everyone can relate to, or nearly everyone. Bad bosses. Bad bosses equal bad leadership, equal bad experience for employees, low morale, and ultimately I would think, I mean, I'm not in leadership, right? Not in the way you are, but a company that doesn't perform nearly as well as it could. Could you talk about some of the bad experiences or what you see as common mistakes in leadership for what most of us will do is work for companies or small businesses?
Sure. Like some of my own experiences that were the bad bosses, I think anybody of your listeners could attribute to this. It's that micromanagement boss. You are proficient at what you do, and your boss comes in and gives you a task to do. And then 6 hours later, they want to tell you how to do that task. And even though that you know how to accomplish that task, they're still, just micromanaging you once or twice a day, telling you how to do it. And it really stifles the spirit of a team, of an individual, opposed to a good leader that's going to come in and say, hey, Ted, I need you to get this task completed. This is the deadline. This is how I want this task. At the end, this is our goal of this particular task. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll check in with you in a couple of days and see how you're doing and see if you need anything. That's another way to handle that. And as adults, they respond much better to that because they feel trusted. And that's the big thing with a high-performing team versus a team that is just stressed out, hates their boss, is they feel like they're not trusted or respected or valued. And when you come in and you give your team a task and you say, hey, guys, this is what I need done. This is a deadline. You guys are all smart. You know what you're doing. I know you're going to figure out a way to do it, but I'm here as a resource. If you have any questions, go forth and conquer. And you'll be really surprised at how much better they do when you approach it like that.
I think everyone's experienced that micromanaging. I know I certainly have. I don't know if this is something you talk about or teach, but where does that micromanaging mindset come from for bosses? Obviously, it's like, oh, well, maybe if I stay on top of my employees, I could get them to do what I want them to do faster, right? That part's obvious, but what's behind that in your experience?
There's a phrase I like to use. Insecurity breeds micromanagement. So what basically is happening when you have that micromanaging boss, what you need to think of in the back of your mind is that boss either was promoted out of their abilities or in their mind, they're insecure about their ability to lead or accomplish these tasks. And they're afraid to have their bosses, harassing them. So they are insecure about themselves and their abilities as a leader. So therefore, that breeds the micromanagement.
So they're insecure about their ability to lead, or they perhaps have been promoted. I forget who said this, but I know you know this, Jay, and I think we've even had this conversation about this idea. But people get promoted until they're at a level of their incompetence.
Yes,
right. So they're doing great at their current level. Then it's like, oh, you're doing great. Here's a promotion. Now you're going to be in charge of a team. Except they had the skills to do that particular job they were doing at the time. Now they're promoted and maybe they do well there, but eventually people get promoted to this point where they just don't have what it takes, or at least the skills, talent, whatever, or let's say skills, right? Because that's a learnable part, to make things happen, to help that company or team or whatever become high performance. What can you tell us about that?
So typically what happens is, what I've seen is, I'll use the private sector, let's say. So let's say there's a CPA or somebody that's in the accounting firm, and they're killing it. They're hitting their numbers. They're just killing it. They're crushing it. They're doing a good job. And management goes, wow, this person is really crushing it. Let's promote them. Cool. So now they promote them, and now they're in charge of, a team of accountants. And because they were such a high performer themselves, they don't know how to coach and mentor a team of people. So they get frustrated because, well, why aren't you performing at the level that I just performed at? You all suck. And it causes this problem. And so now that breeds the micromanagement. You know what I mean? People that are real high performers don't always, as individuals, don't always make good leaders. And that's why they need some type of training. They were good at their job, but now you throw them in a leadership position, they are going to suck, and they are going to piss off their team, and it's going to cause problems. And if, either the company's going to realize, wow, we need to let them go, or, they realize we never really gave them an opportunity to succeed as a leader, so we need to give them some training.
Yeah. When we're talking about this, I think immediately, a couple of stories come to mind. One story is with a client of mine who was the founder and CEO or co-founder of his company, and also performed in the role of CEO. And he, had a degree from Caltech, right? And so this guy was just a very highly intelligent, highly financially successful guy, right? And he would come into our personal training sessions sometime and be like talking about his parts of his team. He's had 600 employees, right? Be like, those MFers, and I'm like, dude, right? That's not how you, if that's how you really feel. And he, I want him to be able to share with me, right? But I'm like, that's how you really feel, what's going on there, right? I didn't ever talk to him too much because I wasn't in a role to, and I don't have expertise on how to help guys with that, right? I helped him with himself, but that's one thing that comes to mind. And what you said, high performing people sometimes don't make the best leaders because they don't have those soft skills is the thing that comes to mind, right? You've got to be able to relate to people. And one thing that you said, why aren't these people performing? They look back, and in his case, he was just at the top already. He founded the company, but he was like, why aren't people performing? I was like, Paul, you're not a normal person. You're way more intelligent. You see things in a very different way. You grew up, your father was an entrepreneur. People don't have that. How do you help people like my client or other people who are in those positions? Do you help them realize that they shouldn't be a leader? Do you help them train them up with skills so that they can finally fit the role of a leader? Or what do you help with in those situations?
So one of the courses I put together it's called the Leadership Foundation course. And it's kind of the basis of my company, what I do. Obviously, I tailor make it to whatever situation, whatever business, but it's the foundation for kind of what I put together for the business. And the first part of that is actually called Fit the Lead. And what I do is I take people like your client, and we sit down, whether it be with him or a group, a leadership team, and we go through a lot of the stuff of looking inside that leader. One of the phrases I like to use is, before we lead others, we have to lead ourselves. And if you want to give somebody the best chance to succeed as a leader, you really need to understand that, hey, we need to look at yourself first before you go out there and you start leading a bunch of human beings, because it's going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done in your life. So you need to get yourself right. And that could be, talking about how to deal with your stress management. Kind of like, do you have a physical fitness program? Because as we know, and as you know, leaders that exercise are more successful and do a better job. What's your nutrition like? Just going through everything that that we deal with in life. It's like past experiences. Did you have a bad childhood and you're still hanging on to that? Did you go through a divorce? A lot of us have been through divorces. I've been through it. There's a little phrase that helped me when I wasn't doing so well, coming off of that is, did you drink the poison and hope the other person died? A lot of people, that was an aha moment for me, because I'm like, holy crap, that's me. So
sure.
I started making some abrupt changes in my life when I heard that. But, a lot of people get hung up on that. They're so bitter about something that happened in their past, whatever that is. And what I've seen in my experience, and I'm sure some of your listeners have, if they've been in a situation where somebody just totally freaked out about a minor situation, you're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And what that is that person did not deal with something in their past properly, and whatever situation they're in absolutely triggered them. And then, now they're screaming at their team, and they're all freaked out, like, what's going on with this person? So that's one of the things, like, your client, he's kind of freaking out. So we kind of look at him. What's going on with you? Let's take a look inside. Let's look under the hood and see what's going on with you, and see what we can kind of smooth all that out, give you some tools to kind of, what we call emotional intelligence, having the ability to, manage your emotions.
Can you share a story of someone you worked with where they were struggling with something, and then you were able to kind of train them up, and then made a shift in their ability to lead?
Yeah. I had an employee that works for me, and I'd known him for a long time. He didn't have a great reputation as far as being a good worker, a reliable worker. He had a reputation for like kind of disappearing in the middle of the day and nobody could find him, and being lazy. I'm sure some of your listeners can relate. But anyway, so I always give my people expectations. It's one of the things I teach in my course. I said, it's super important to give anybody that works for you your expectations. Explain it, make them sign it. Well, I did this with this particular employee, like I do with everybody. So he started showing up late. He was disappearing. Couldn't get him on his cell phone. I'm like, all right, well, me exercising emotional intelligence, I was pissed off, because I'm like, why is this guy doing this? I told him, I explained to him. So I'm like, all right, I got to exercise the skills that I teach. I'm pissed off about this. Okay, this is why I'm pissed. Dealt with it. Put a plan into place. Okay, I'm going to talk to him and see what's going on. I want to give him an opportunity to explain himself. So I brought him in, had a conversation with him. Now, granted, I was still pissed off that he's doing this, because as leaders, we have egos. You violated my orders as a boss or whatever. It gets our ego pissed off. So we have to keep our ego in check. So I sat this employee down and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, dude, you have been late 3 days this week. My rule is, if you're going to be more than 15 minutes late, you text me and tell me what's going on. Or if you're out in the field and I need to get a hold of you, you have a cell phone issued to you by the organization. You need to answer it. So what is going on? And so he proceeded to tell me and got very emotional. He had gone through a rough divorce, and now he's a single parent. He's got 2 kids. And the ex is not following through on getting the kids to school and all this stuff. So I found out he was stressed out because he's trying to get his kids to school, get them picked up, and do all the parental things. And it was stressing him out. And he was afraid, he didn't want to share it with me or whatever. It was his own private business. He was a prideful person, and I get it. So I was able to make that connection with him. And I said, okay, doing coaching, like we do. I says, well, why don't you tell me a solution to make this situation better so that you can get to work on time? And I said, I said, here's some options. We can change your work hours. I don't mind doing that. And long story short, I gave him the weekend to kind of think about it. And we came back, and he came to the solution that I had already had in the back of my mind, which is we're going to change his work hours. So we have the opportunity to work 4 10s, and he decided wisely to go to a 5/8. And since doing that, he is totally transformed as an employee. and he's become one of my best employees and most reliable.
Wow.
His attitude has changed. And so, that's an example of, what we call crucial conversations, or, using emotional intelligence because, I was mad and, I told him to text me if he's going to be late, and he didn't. But I sat down and looked at the situation, and I just reached out to him in an empathetic way as a human and says, "Hey man, what's going on with you? Is there something going on? There's something, in your personal life, tell me what's going on." But taking that approach really transformed this employee. Like I said, now he's one of my top guys on my team, super reliable. And I think it really showed him that I respected him. And now we have this mutual trust and respect. If I ask anything of him, he absolutely, I'll take care of it. I'll do it. He'll stay late. He'll do extra assignments if I need to. He's a great employee now. Just by taking that approach, opposed to, maybe some bosses would have brought him in and chewed his ass, and
you come late next time and you're fired.
Yeah.
Right. But the guy's struggling. He's got a legitimate problem. Yeah.
And, gosh, with this COVID stuff right now, a lot of people are leading teams remotely. Parents are trying to homeschool while they're doing their work. And my friends I talk to that are in that situation, they're just struggling. So, being a leader nowadays and having that ability to kind of be like, take that step back. Let me look at this situation objectively. And, obviously we have a mission to do. We have a goal with our employees, and what's going to get that done? What's the best way to get that done? And engaging our employees in that manner, you're really you could transform them like I did with my employee. Think about that with, a whole team of people right now, especially with COVID. You can really take your team from mediocre to really a high-performing team just by taking that approach.
What I really appreciate about this story that you shared is that, you mentioned emotional intelligence. You said you had to check your ego because you were feeling a bit aggravated because he's violating your rules. It is a hierarchy. You're the boss, right? And
right.
But instead of doing the thing that is so easy to do, which probably most people do, chew them out, threaten them, or whatever else, whatever kind of aggressive leadership style, right? People have. But you said, okay, you're able to understand that first you need to get his side of the story. Is it just that he's a rebel and doesn't, he just doesn't care, and he's never going to care? But after speaking to him, you were able to gain his trust enough for him to share with you what's going on. He felt comfortable sharing with you, even though you had kind of mentioned that he was, we have this thing where we're like, no, that's my personal life, that's my professional life. But there is there is separation, but there's a lot of bleed over between the two that so many of us either aren't aware of or don't take as seriously. So after you had that conversation and he confided in you, now this guy turned around, he's one of your best people. What would you say, and when I hear that too, what I like about it is because some people say, take a more empathetic approach to leadership, right? And it comes from a very, I don't want to say weak place, but from maybe a person who hasn't, let's just say, hasn't, had a background in military and law enforcement that you have. But here you are saying the same thing. We need to help people feel like they can trust us, be, confident with us, confide in us. And I wanted to ask you, because it seems like some of the best leadership lessons come from people who've been in military positions. What do you, and the thing that I think of about leadership in military positions, especially with people, right? You're either preparing to be in combat or preparing to potentially be in combat where people's lives are on the line. And I contrast that with
leadership in, say, a company where it's like, let's make money, guys, and money is important in the modern world and everything, but losing money, making money, performing well, not performing well, you can recover from those things, but you can't. But if you get an arm blown off because of a bad mistake or so on, or more people get killed in combat, what I'm getting at is the stakes are higher. What can you tell us about the lessons that come from maybe military experience or your personal military and law enforcement experience, and how you think about those lessons and how they apply to leadership and how the leadership styles of people who without that experience, like, I know it's a kind of a convoluted question I'm asking, but can you, I know we've known each other long enough that I know what you understand what I'm asking. Can you unpack that for us?
One of the, obviously I was in the military, I served during wartime, and, I've been, like I said, 25 years in law enforcement.
So you've seen combat, Jay?
Not in the traditional sense. I was in the Navy, and I was on an aircraft carrier during the first Gulf War. And, I wasn't getting shot at personally every day, but I will say that working up on the flight deck and, continuous flight ops for, a month and a half, 45 days, working 18, 20 hours a day, maybe getting an hour's worth of sleep and having to just go. The stakes were very high. We almost had some missiles shot at us a couple times. So that wasn't personally getting shot at, but just as scary.
Wartime stress, period.
Yeah. More than, constantly. Yeah.
Right. More than any civilian would ever come even close to experiencing.
So that was my first experience with that level of leadership, because you have a job to do. And if you don't do that job right, or you don't perform your job, lives are going to be lost. We could lose a plane or a pilot, or, we may not accomplish the mission, to take out the enemy that particular mission was for, because we didn't do our job right, and the missiles didn't come off and hit their targets right. That level of leadership was my first exposure to it. Fast forwarding into law enforcement, you see, I've been involved in countless stuff, but I was on SWAT for 5 years. And I think the people that are in the military and law enforcement, I think one of the things that we have an advantage over is we're very mission focused, and we communicate what the mission is. And, one of the things I take away from a unit like SWAT is everybody is, obviously not everybody can do it. So to even be on the team, you had to put significant effort mentally and physically into that. And you have to maintain a very high level of physical fitness, mental toughness, and just your skills. Otherwise, you're dismissed from the team. But I will say what I take away from that, and what, just I bring into the business, is being mission focused and communicating what your goal is, what your mission is. And that was the one thing that was great in the military, in a unit like SWAT, and even some of the sergeants I worked for in patrol that were good, is the goal was clearly communicated to everybody. And it helped me create a term that I have in my training. It's called team consciousness. Everybody on that team, everybody on that SWAT mission knows what the mission is. Our mission is to apprehend the bad guy, the armed bad guy in that house. All right. So that is the ultimate mission. So a team on the backside of the house, or the sniper team, everybody knows that, and they conduct themselves in their operations in a way that's going to accomplish that mission. If there's a deviation or something, we communicate. And that's why teams like that are always a high performing team. And I think you see a lot of these leadership books out there, and I've read them all, and, they really resonate with me. And I take snippets from it about leaders that have been in combat that were successful, and they write these books. And, this is real world stuff. It's not academia and some some guy that did a bunch of research about leadership and he's writing about it. Well, that's great. That's one part of it. But I want to listen to the guy that's been shot at and successfully led a team to accomplish a mission.
Yeah. And this brings us to something I'm really passionate about, which is, you mentioned, like, I love studies. I love research. I talk about it all the time in terms of health and fitness on the show. But at the end of the day, you've got to get results in the real world. And are you getting that, yes or no? And one thing that I think about was thinking about when you're telling this, I mean, you weren't even telling the story, you were giving this example of like a bad guy in a house and you know, the mission of, you know, get these guys in these planes so that they can run these continuous missions and know the missiles have to come off, right? And, you know, so they need the payload, they need the gas, everything needs to be on point, or else you lose millions of dollars of equipment and planes, a pilot, you know, human life, or, you know, maybe there's collateral damage. And then thinking about your SWAT example there, where like, oh, everyone's surrounding this house. Everyone kind of needs to be focused in on that one mission. And what I kind of think about is like, everyone's there. Not only do they know what they have the team consciousness that you're talking about and know what the mission is, and if there's a deviation, communicate it. But I'm thinking of bodies in action, ready, putting missiles on, or I don't know what goes on an aircraft carrier with it, but like doing whatever, you're like doing stuff. And one thing I constantly have been stuck in personally, but also rant about a lot, is people listen to books and read books and go down YouTube rabbit holes, think they know about something, but they don't get the experience. So therefore, the results don't change in their life, even though they may take, like you said, take a few snippets away. And it brings to mind the term embodied leadership, right? Embodied. I love that word, embodiment. It's like, how do you learn how to shoot a gun, or let's say ride a bike, for those people who may be turned off by talking about firearms, right? Like, hey, here's how you get on the bike, hold the handle steady, start pedaling, make sure you know, if you're starting to fall over, adjust the handlebars so you don't fall over. We can talk about it. We can talk about it for hours. We can have you do a course for days, just talking about the theory of riding a bike, but you don't actually know how to ride one until you get on it and do it. What do you help people like, and I know you have this approach as well. What do you have to say about people who, or leaders, let's say, who might have, you know, of course they have a, you know, experience running a company or being in an executive position, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they've read some books or maybe a course or two. But what about some of the things that you do? Because I know you take people in leadership positions, you do Krav Maga with them and things like that. Can you talk about what you do in a physical sense to help people become better leaders and why that's important?
If I'm working with a client or somebody and they are interested in the physical part of the leadership training, then we'll make that happen. And not everybody, that's kind of their thing. That's why I kind of like to make a tailor-made kind of experience for whatever business I'm working with or entrepreneur.
So you don't force them to do it.
No.
You're saying it's case by case. Interesting. Okay.
It's a case by case. The last thing I ever want to do as, you know, a leadership coach or a trainer is I want to have the same canned leadership approach to every company I work with or every person, because then I wouldn't be successful. Everybody's different. Every business is different. So one of the things that I do when I start working with somebody is I sit down and have a conversation with them. I get a feel for them, and I want to see what they're about. You know, I want to see what kind of person they are. You know, are they like your client? What you talked about earlier? Is that their approach? And they want me to come in and just say, fix my employees. You know, they're all a bunch of idiots. And I always look at him and say, are they? You know, I say, why don't we talk about you for a minute and then see what we can do from there in a nice, constructive way. But one of the things that leaders, this is why exercise is so important for leaders, is it helps with your self-confidence. It helps with your mental processes and all that. So I talk about the importance of that. If they're in a situation where they really want to ramp up their physical fitness and their exercise, happy to make that a part of the training. But like with leadership, and me working with you, is you get to a point where you have to realize I need help. And I've gone as far as I can go by myself, and I need a coach, or I need somebody, an expert, to come in and help me get to that next level, help me to get over this hump of getting my business to get over this hump and go to the next level. Or, I'm individually, I want to be physically fit, and I'm kind of stuck, and I need help from Ted, or, along those lines. So one of the things I would say to anybody out there is, if you're at that point where you're stuck, you need to come to the realization you need help, whether it be with me or somebody else, or, if it's in the physical fitness realm, or talk to Ted. But you have to come to that mature decision. You're never going to grow if you don't realize that you need help.
Yeah, and that's a tough one for so many people.
It was tough for me, Ted.
It was tough. Let's talk about that, because I used to be like that. I know I was, but I'm so far removed from it now. Now I'm just like, who do I want to hire? People are like trying to tell me it's like, no, I already know who you are. I just want to hire you. Like, let's just do this. And I just hired a physical therapist to help me with my back, even though I'm very knowledgeable about this. And but I want to take things to the next level. And after just a few sessions, literally 2 sessions, and giving me a workout program based on her assessment of me. So it's a great answer, right? You said you need to give an assessment. All good professionals, whether they're dealing with your body or leadership skill, do that. And then within a matter of a couple of days of doing the program, my back's way better than it's been in the past, since my injury has happened, actually.
Right.
So let's talk about your situation. Like, it was hard for you. Why is it hard for people to seek help outside of themselves?
I think it's our ego. Our ego gets in the way. I can figure this out. And then the other thing too is a rabbit hole of internet garbage out there.
The rabbit hole of internet garbage. It's a good one.
It's just a dumpster fire of buy this supplement, you'll lose 20 pounds, or do this workout. And
what are some leadership examples? What are some leadership examples that you've seen?
Oh, geez. When I started my business, of course, I want to go out there and see what's out there. What am I sticking my toe into? What is this pond I'm sticking my toe into? And everybody's an expert in these leadership things. And I think I offer something a little better and a little more authentic than some of these other places, because they're all academia. They're all these smart, super smart people. And, if my business grew, and maybe I would hire them as part of my team, but I don't think that's really going to push the needle for a person looking to get their business to the next level, is somebody that's super academia, and they've done all this research, and they show you these graphs and why this works and why that works. But man, unless you've been in the trenches of leadership and dealing with human beings and all the stuff that, I'll say it again, leading humans is one of the toughest jobs you can ever do. Leading a company of humans is one of the toughest jobs you can ever do. And you have to be physically and mentally resilient to succeed.
Yeah, 100%. Even though Giselle, at least in my situation, is more of the man, like she has. This actually is a great question. So I'll even take an example from my life. So Giselle, as you know, is kind of the person who she's a high performer business-wise over me. business-wise, right? I'm a high performer when it comes to I can detach emotionally from data and I work well with people, but I tend to be too easy on people, and she tends to be too hard. She's like more the type A, like, hey, do this. And why haven't you gotten it done? What's your problem? I'm like, hey, well, what's going on? Okay, well, cool. But and I'll have a conversation that the person will walk away from feeling better about, but I may not get the results that I want. It's like, okay, well, they left feeling good, which is what I want, but I also want the results too, the performance on their part too. How do you strike the balance between those two things?
It's tough. And one thing I tell leaders or people that I work with is don't get wrapped up in what is actually in front of you. Stay focused on what is your ultimate goal? What is your ultimate mission? Or what are you trying to accomplish? And so many people, including myself, have gotten wrapped up with what is exactly in front of you and what are you dealing with and why, let's constantly be thinking about what is our goal and our long-term mission. Giselle's taking one approach and you're taking another. But ultimately, what is going to accomplish the mission is your way, dealing with your clients, because, people that come to you, this is an emotional process for them, so you are cognizant of that. Whereas if you took that approach where it's like, why didn't you lose 5 pounds this week? What is wrong with you? I told you what to do. Is that going to help them accomplish the mission to create a healthier lifestyle? All it's going to do is alienate them and make them feel worse about themselves. So the way I would kind of answer your question would be is to stay mission focused. What is the ultimate goal for the situation? All of us at work, we get so wrapped up in a particular report or this thing, but then you have to look at things objectively, like kind of take a step back and look at everything as a whole and be like, okay, this is my ultimate goal or mission or deadline I got to do. Getting wrapped up in something so minuscule about the bigger picture is not gonna help you accomplish that.
Yeah. So coming back to that, what are you trying to accomplish here? Instead of getting sucked into the moment and losing yourself to that situation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great, Jay. And man, such a cool conversation. One, I really hope this is just the first of many. I know this is your first podcast that you're doing, first interview. Really, really great to have you on and everything. And to have you come back and, share more of your leadership lessons. If you're interested in learning more about Jay and his leadership solutions, his coaching, go to dynamicleadershipsolutions.com. That is his website. And on there is his email, which is Jay@Dynamic Leadership Solutions. You can reach out to him there. Jay, I like how you're not on Facebook or Twitter, any of that stuff. You're real serious on the LinkedIn. So you can also find Jay Farrington on LinkedIn, which we will have on the show notes for this page. But best place to go is dynamicleadershipsolutions.com. Jay, what would you say is the one thing that you hope people will walk away with after listening to this podcast?
Just to understand that leadership is more about not telling people what to do, but inspiring people what to do. And one of the things I always say is leadership is not rank or a position. It is a way you conduct yourself. And when you inspire the hearts and minds of the people that you lead or the company, you will see 10 times the success opposed to the leaders who just tell people what to do.
Wow. Boom. Jay Farrington, thanks so much for coming on the show. You are a total rock star. Can't wait to see what you do with Dynamic Leadership Solutions. And man, let's catch up and do this again soon.
Sounds good, Ted. Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Legendary Life Podcast. I hope you learned a lot from Jay Farrington. I hope you took away a lot of good leadership lessons. In fact, I'll ask you, what is your one big takeaway from listening to today's interview? What is that one big takeaway, that one thing, that one aha moment? Is it something that I said, Jay said, something that came up for you completely independent of the ideas that were talked about today? What was it? And then even more important than that, what is a way you can take that concept and put it into action into your life? How can we make what you heard today, or what that insight that you gleaned today, how do we make that actionable? That's what I want to leave you with. Hope you enjoyed today. See you on Friday for the Real Talk Friday episode.